My name's Kurt. I'm the head of sales at Cloud9. For those of you who don't know who Cloud9 are, we're a Microsoft Dynamics partner. We'll go into a little bit more detail about us. Joined this afternoon by Phil from TechQuarters. TechQuarters, one of the award-winning leading Office 365 and cloud partners, and between the two of us, we're going to do our very best to cover not just some marketing consent side of GDPR, but also data and data security. So we'll keep you for about half an hour, 40 minutes this afternoon. I know you've got Easter holidays to go to, so thanks a lot for joining, and hopefully you find this afternoon beneficial. So firstly, what is the GDPR? So I'm sure many of you have been to webinars or seminars similar to this. The GDPR is a new regulation that comes into force on the 25th of May 2018. So we're now under 2 months away. The real key remit around the GDPR is it gives power back to the individuals. So we'll go into a little bit more of that in just a second. It applies to all businesses that hold data on EU citizens. So even if you're outside the EU, if you do business with or hold data of those inside of the EU, the GDPR certainly will need to be enforced to yourselves. Businesses want to demonstrate how the data is being stored, how it's being used, and how consent is given. So mentioned about power back to the individuals. So what the GDPR requires is businesses must keep an audit or must demonstrate how they store their data, how they use it for things like marketing or for other internal practices, and where they got that consent from. So one of the key parts is now we need to be transparent in terms of what is that data that we are looking after, and even before we get it, what is our privacy policy saying in order to what we're actually going to be doing with the data. Final point, individuals have more rights in regards to inquiring, updating, and also removing their data held by companies. So there's a lot to do with power back to the individuals. As we said, individuals now have the rights to inquire as to what data we hold of them. They can update that data if they would like to, if it's not correct, but also they have the right to erasure, which is actually removing that data from your database. So a little bit about Cloud9, just a few things here. As I said, we are a Microsoft Dynamics partner primarily. We work with helping small businesses grow. We have a huge amount of expertise in sales and marketing and also experience. We pride ourselves on being business change consultants. So there's a lot more to CRM than just what field goes where and what report do we want. We really try to understand what the key drivers are behind the project, and we like to make the solution work to the business rather than the other ones. And we are also an award-winning business. We're part of the President's Club, recently won awards with Gatwick Diamond Business as well, which is local to where we are based down in Brighton. So again, just sort of overviewing the key changes under GDPR. So personal privacy. GDPR brings a number of new regulations that aren't in practice today under the DPA. From May, a customer can come to you and say, I want to know about all the data that you hold on me. As we said, I want to see how that data is being used. I want to edit or remove that data. So this means for us as marketeers and as businesses, you need to know what data you have, where you got it from, and what you're doing with it. We've already touched on this in terms of what data do we have. So Microsoft, one of the leading lights in data securities, and they now have UK data centres with obviously predetermined Brexit on the horizon. With cloud-based solutions or software as a service, then the data processor in our case is Microsoft. So Phil and the team will talk a little bit more about data security, but one of the great parts of having Microsoft as your processor or support and hosting your data is that they take a lot of that security and responsibility away from you. So policies, we touched about having privacy policies. This is a huge part of the GDPR. So your policies need to be written in plain English so that they are completely transparent. And they must include how you will use the individual's data, how long it is stored for, and who will it be shared. So you also need to have the detail around security measures. So again, something that Microsoft, your hosting provider, will be responsible for. A little bit of a tip want to look at ASOS or ASOS, their new privacy policy is very, very good. So it might give you a few ideas there. And also training. So this is more the people piece. So as the GDPR, organizations with 250 employees must have a data protection officer, 250 employees or more. So it has estimated that there will be between 75 and 100,000 new roles in the world as a data protection officer. So again, if you're smaller than that, you don't have to have someone specified as a data protection officer, but it's still important that you have somebody who is managing that process, managing your data within the business. So what can you do today? I've done a number of talks around GDPR and actually started all the way back in, I think September or even August of last year. But these things are still very relevant to today. What can you do? We're less than 2 months away. So discover what data do we have? Where is it? Who has access to it, and how is it being used? The TechQuarters guys are going to show you a fantastic tool that they're helping businesses with in trying to determine what is this personal data that we have and where is it. So we'll come into that in a bit more detail. Control. So this links back to our transparency around policies. You're now required to tell people how you use their data. So you must make sure that you're adhering to the promises that you're putting in. Protection. So is your data secure? Did you know that if you have a security breach, you have 72 hours to report it to the authorities, but also your customers? So I don't know about you, but it's not a conversation I want to be having with my clients around that their data has been breached. So let's make sure that our data is secure and protected. Reporting. This is a section that certainly Cloud9 and our business can really help you with. Apparently, the rumor mill is telling us that organizations, the ISO will be asking businesses where and how their data is used. So you need to be able to prove the consent that you've gathered, where you've got that consent from, and also that the consent that you have and you're adhering to those promises made through your privacy. And review. So this isn't a point in time activity. The context that you use your data will change. So ensure that you put in flexible processes so you can actually manage that change in the future. GDPR certainly won't be going away, but your business processes and ultimately your marketing message will change. So how can a good CRM help you become GDPR compliant? So discovering your existing data, so data cleansing. There are many businesses we work with who have multiple databases. They have email automation accounts with people like MailChimp and also have a ton of spreadsheets. All of that data is going to be governed by GDPR. So having a central location such as a CRM will give you a fantastic start to understanding where, what, and how you're using that data. Ongoing data and consent management. So this is really around categorization. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we've been doing in just a second. We've started to build checkboxes and field security on certain data fields. So what this is going to do is give us the very simple capability to search within our data, understand what consent that we have, what data we have, which will essentially make sure that we're using it in a compliant fashion. And easy to use. So mentioned a bit about searching. If I just move on to a bit more about all of these, we've got discovery. So the data discovery, the discovery of data, they're having it all in one place. The categorization of personal and non-personal data, and also all of the searching that comes around that. So by having all of your data in one place, how quickly can we search, manipulate, and therefore use that data compliantly? The consent management. So this is one of the headaches and nightmares that a lot of us are having. Marketing people are constantly on the phone. We're using Dynamics. We really want to be clean with our consent management. So recording of consent choices. So which are the different things that we're going to be marketing? Which are the different pieces of content that we're going to be sharing? The ability to quickly view and update it or even withdraw if that's possible. If you're working on spreadsheets, many siloed systems at the moment, think to yourself, how quickly, if I have somebody on the phone, could I access the data that I have on them? And bear in mind that needs to be all the data, and therefore update, withdraw, or change it at the click of a button. This is the sort of thing that you're going to need to be doing. And also we want an audit trail. So I've mentioned about ISO and other governing bodies who might come in. It's important that you have a history of all the previous data, all of the consent opt-ins, the opt-outs, and all those conversations that you're having with clients. So I've just brought up a couple of things, a couple of screen grabs that we've started to help clients with implementing it ourselves, but also with a number of clients as well. So on the left-hand side, we've got a simple, short example of a form here. Remember that these boxes, they have to be unticked. So essentially the consent that we're gathering has to be completely freely given. And once it's been submitted, then on the right-hand side, we've got a screen grab of our CRM record. So this is then showing our preferences, the date that we received the consent, and the blue click through there is even a click through to see the form that they've submitted. So it's not just storing the data, storing the subscription, but actually the proof of where you got that data from, all at the click of a button. So off the back of this, we can then use our searching, use our advanced find to create our marketing lists, to create other lists, and ensure that we stay compliant. So Dynamics uses both static but also dynamic marketing lists. And a typical marketing will not just be, yes, they're a business that are based in London, for example, they're interested in Dynamics, but actually have they opted in to be contacted about our webinars and events, or have they been opted in to receive information about Microsoft Dynamics, for example? Okay, so this is the sort of things that we're starting to help with, and if you want this sort of help, we can pick this up after the call. So finally, just a short summary from me, and I'll hand over to Phil. But really the three key points that we're helping our clients with is your existing data. So where is it? How am I using it? And how I use it need to change? Do I have people's consent already? Policies and actions. What does my current privacy policy say? It will probably need to change. Remember ASOS? How am I going to gain value from prospects? So some people like H&M are using incentives, they're using offers. If you sign in or opt into if you give us consent to receive X, X and X, you get a 10% voucher. What sort of things can you do? You have to be inventive and not just mail shot everyone to try and get their consent. And processes and systems. So does the technology I'm currently using help me to be GDPR compliant? Does it mean that I have instant access and reporting that I need when either the data subject or actually ISO come knocking at my door? Does my marketing tool support my new business sales, but also stay compliant? So again, really need to start, and now is the perfect time to do it. Think about the processes and think about the systems that we have. Okay. So that's Cloud9. Hopefully that's been informative. I'm going to pass over to Phil now from TechQuarters. So he's going to jump on just now and going to take you through a little bit more about data security and the things that they're starting to help their clients with. So Phil, over to you.
So we are TechQuarters. We specialize in Office 365, EMS, which is the security suite that goes around Office 365. Azure, Microsoft Azure, so some of you may be using some of these at the minute. Azure is basically hosting of your kind of servers and environment in the cloud with Microsoft. And we also have something called the 365 Cloud Academy. So this is training that's specifically around Office 365 and the Microsoft products. We were a few accolades on there as well. So we were the World of the Year Award in 2013. We're still speaking about it to this day. It was a pretty big award for us to win. It was about 660,000 partners worldwide. We were number one for helping SMB businesses move to the cloud with Microsoft. And we obviously hold multiple gold competencies as well around Office 365 and Azure. We did actually get into GDPR plainly because we actually support a number of customers in and around London. So we do all the managed IT systems for them, which kind of looped us in directly into the security side of things, and really kind of getting a lot of them asking us questions around GDPR. What is it? How are we affected? And obviously, we had to kind of come up with some information for them. So as far as what GDPR come from, obviously can I give you a bit of information before about an overview of it? But this is just a bit of a study that the government did back in 2015, and really out the back of that kind of GDPR has grown. So a few interesting stats on here really around breaches themselves, because this is what we're looking to stop really with GDPR, and really highlight the fact, when you're dealing with people's information, that you should be dealing with that in a secure environment. Quite surprising to me really is, 90% of large organizations suffered a data breach which is a pretty big stat. I mean, a lot of these companies we're dealing with day to day, obviously social media companies, your email, for example, very, very large companies, and they're kind of suffering these data breaches, which is a little bit distressing when you think about your actual information that's out there as well. 14, so the median number of breaches per year. So we're talking about more than one a month with these large companies, which is more than one, pretty big stat. 50% of the worst breaches were down to human error. So really what we're looking at here as well is, how can we use technology to help mitigate that human error side of things? And we've got a few things which I'm going to go into shortly, which can kind of help with that aspect of it as well. What are we talking about when we say PII data? So personally identifiable information. We're talking about, these are a few of the variables that we're looking at. So you might be being bounced around, but there's about 190 different variables across this. So a few of the key ones are just here. A surprising one to me was for any kind of techies on the phone, IP addresses, which is kind of, your internet, how you're found on the internet. So again, it really can go very granular, this. And the reason why there's 190 is a lot of different companies you might have customer ID reference numbers, social aliases. They are classed as PII data. So things that you might not have thought about or might be kind of outside of scope at the minute are going to very much come under the Microsoft, so to speak. I kind of touched on it before as well, kind of user rights, obviously giving power back to the users. These are the 8 that users will have come the 25th of May. A couple of key ones for us really are the right to rectification. So the right to rectification means that a user can call up, come May the 25th, to you as a company and say, hi, look, I've recently been married, I've changed my surname, could you please update that? So they have the right to getting their name rectified in systems. Another one is the right to erasure. So again, a big one which is in play now. Obviously people are able to unsubscribe to services and whatnot. People can call up and just say, look, I want you to erase my data and I want you to prove that you've erased the data as well. Now, there are time limits around some of these, which we'll go into shortly. But there's quite a few different rights on there, and obviously making sure that you've got the right systems in place to handle all these requests is quite critical. As far as accountability and responsibility goes around those specific rights, really the main one that we're looking at really is a data breach. That is the last thing that anyone wants to have anyway. So when you're talking about that, we're looking at things like the crypto virus or kind of hackers getting onto your network. So a lot of organisations, I'm sure you've already got a lot of security in place around this anyway, but just really looking in a bit more detail about how we can really stop this from happening. And if it does happen, what happens now if you do, come May the 25th, should you have a data breach, what happens? So what happens is basically you've got 72 hours to report that data breach to the ICO. So the ICO being the Information Commissioner's Office who govern this, the GDPR. Now, as far as the actual crisis side of things goes, you should have a procedure in place. So should the data breach ever happen, you've got a procedure in place that says, right, we're going to stop the leak, find out where it's coming from, create the remediation plan, and then remediate and secure and inform the regulator. So again, making sure that you've got moving back on to what Kurt mentioned earlier on about policies and procedures. This is very important that you have something like this in place. Should this ever happen to you, fingers crossed and touch wood it doesn't, then that you have got the right procedures in place to deal with this. So really data breach being the worst one that could happen. Then you've got obviously 2 months for the right to request to erase data. So a time to do that. And then the rest of them, you've basically got a month. So you've got a little bit more time for the rest of them, but the data breach being the most important one, and just making sure that doesn't happen really, and you've got the right systems and security in place to try and mitigate that risk as much as possible. As far as where we come into this, so we have got a 3-stage solution where we do look at the data discovery side of things. So what PII data have you got currently? Where is this? It may be structured data, which means it could be in a CRM system. You could have it in Excel spreadsheets, for example, or it might be unstructured data. It might be a case that you've got a lot of different Word documents that are all in kind of some folders or on a file server somewhere. So you might need a little bit more work and looking at all that is and kind of finding out, well, we've got a lot of PII data, but I'm not quite sure which drive it's in on the PC, or maybe it's on paper. So again, it's just really looking at a discovery process and understanding where all your PII is first of all. So we have a tool that can go out across the network. So it goes out across all your endpoints, your devices, your servers, SharePoint, for example, Dropbox. It can go into there and search for all this PII data. So it's hard-coded to search for those 190 variables of PII. Then, obviously, it's looking at that data. So following the actual tool, going out across the network, and understanding, right, okay, this is where all your PII data is. This is what the PII data is, roughly. What's the next steps now? How do we mitigate against them? Do we need to move it all to a secure location, to one file server? Do we need to move it all to a new CRM system so that it's all categorized, structured, and we can search on that whenever we need to, should we get any of these requests? So then there'll be some recommendations that come out the back of that. Obviously, within the data discovery phase as well, there is a GDPR consultant. So again, looping back to, this isn't just about technology. It is looking at the policies and procedures that you've got in place, the business processes to handle all of this as well. And looking at your current, again, Kurt mentioned that your privacy policies, things like that. So making sure that they're all up to date moving forward so that when the regulation comes out, you're ready, you're understanding from a business point of view what policy procedures you've got in place to adhere to the actual regulation itself. So present stage, obviously we're coming back in, we're talking about the report that we ran, looking at all the PII data, where it is, where it's sat, the security that you've got in place currently as well on the network. And obviously, once the GDPR consultant's been in this present stage, they produce a report as well called the gap analysis, which some of you may have already had done. So that really just looks at where you are at as an organisation and what you need to put in place as far as policies and procedures go, according to the 88 articles in GDPR. And then they also do a benchmarking audit as well. So the benchmarking audit goes, basically looks at how you are as a company and compares it to other companies in your industry as well. So you've got a good idea of where you stand as GDPR goes. The protect phase is really looking at any recommendations that we've made and making sure that the security that you've got around your IT systems in particular is in place. And obviously it's actually able to cope with any attack you may have on your systems. As far as the actual tool itself, what it looks like, this is basically what the process looks like. So you can see a few things there on the left-hand side of what exactly it can search. So things like file shares, OneDrive, Office 365, SharePoint. And then obviously the PII check is done, and then it's actually put out into this nice report, which looks something like this. So this is done with Power BI, so it's another Microsoft tool. And you can see down there on the right-hand side is basically all the endpoints that it's scanned. So on this one, it's scanned around 68 endpoints. And we can see, the different types of PII data that are inside each of the endpoints. So as far as the actual amount of data read as well, 2.5 terabytes of data read, and of that 2.5 terabytes of data, we can see that there was 23.97 megabytes of PII data. So a bit of PII data in there, and obviously a number of endpoints, 84 endpoints with PII data on out of 98. So quite a few people maybe storing data on their desktops, or making sure that they're not doing that moving forward is pretty important with this regulation, to make sure that if you ever do get a request come in to delete data, you know that you've deleted it centrally and people haven't still got copies of this on their desktops and things. So as far as the protect phase goes, so this is basically looking at what policies you've got set up, looking at enroll and devices onto something called mobile device management. I'm not sure. Some people may have this in place already. We use something called Intune for this, which I'll go on to shortly. Encrypting emails, so making sure that emails are end-to-end when you're sending them. Applying organisational policies to documents. So this might be if you handle sensitive data in certain documents, for example, making sure that those documents are encrypted when you're sending them out to clients, or to ensure that they're not forwarding them on to anyone else. You can even put time bombs on documents as well, so this document will expire in 3 days. Protecting from malicious emails, so again, it's quite a bit of different security that you can put in place through Office 365 in particular, if you've got your emails within Office 365, that can protect you against any of these phishing attacks. So I'm sure that probably most people on the call have had some form of, malicious email coming through with some form of attachment coming from someone you don't know. So making sure that really that people aren't clicking on those attachments is quite key. And I'll show you a bit of software in a second that can kind of really help out with bits like that. And then again, data loss prevention. So again, making sure that no credit card details, that type of thing. So depending on the organisation you are, and PII data, for example, isn't leaving the organisation unnecessarily. And again, there are a few other things that you can use to track malicious activity as well. So tracking if hackers are on the network, you can see the stat there on the side, 140 plus days is the average time a hacker sits on your network before being detected. That was a study done by Microsoft in 2016. So really what we'd like to know is we want to know that these people are on our network way in advance so they haven't been able to do anything. So there are actually pieces of software out there that you can have sitting on your network looking out for abnormalities, ensure that that doesn't happen. So Microsoft have got a pretty good enterprise-grade security that you can add on to your Office 365 account. Now, this is called the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. It contains a few things. So the first thing is mobile device management, or Intune, as it's called. What this does is basically it allows you to control the data that you've got across all your mobile devices, so within the organisation. So you can apply policies such as, people. That's great. We want people to still be able to work remotely, work flexibly. However, we do want to make sure that if they've got corporate data on their phone when they're out and about, that they've got a passcode on the phone. They've got to have a 5-digit passcode on the phone. That's fine. That's pretty standard. Okay, if their phone's unlocked, for example, they leave it unlocked. They're maybe looking at doing some emails on the train. Then it locks after 30 seconds automatically. So this is what we're talking about when we say policies and mobile device management. Obviously, we want to make sure that all the devices, that anyone who's using the corporate data on the devices, they're enrolled. So they've got to be, you've joined our company now, look, you've got to be enrolled into our mobile device management, which means that, we can push these policies out and make sure that our corporate data and our IP is protected when you're using it out and about. And we can also make sure that data wiping, so, if they're corporate-owned devices, we can fully wipe the device should people leave or if they lose the device, for example. And you can also selectively with this tool as well. So not only, obviously you've got a lot of people bring your own device these days as well. So, for example, I use my own phone within our company. However, I do realise that there are company applications on there. If I lost my phone, then the company can wipe just the company applications off my phone, leaving all my photos and my personal information on there, so that if I do find it again, all of my information is still there. So it's key that you've got to have that in place as well. Auditing reporting, so you can actually look at reports as well of kind of how many devices you've got in the environment, what software they're on, and obviously when they were enrolled as well. This is obviously rights management service. So this is another application within Enterprise Mobility Suite. So this is kind of really looking at the security around emails and documents as well. So a kind of example you can probably see on the left there is, sorry, Word Online can't open this document because it's protected by information rights management. So that means that basically we've encrypted the actual document to say, look, for some reason, if this document has Pink Panther, only X amount of people can open this document. If it gets sent out to that person, they will not be able to open it. So, for example, this is what happened here. They've sent it out to someone else and they can't open the document because it's protected and encrypted. So you can do that with emails. So you can do that on a simple email as well. So it doesn't have to be a Word document. You can do it on apply time bombs, as I said before, and you can track documents as well. The advanced threat analytics side of things is kind of what I was talking about before as well when I was talking about tracking hackers when they're on the network when you might not know about it. So it's a little bit more enterprise grade, and it sits on servers as well. So it'll sit on something like a domain controller, and it'll be looking out for, something's not quite right over there on the file server. Someone, the CPU seems to have gone up a little bit, which is unusual. It doesn't happen every day. So it's constantly looking out for these 24/7 and making sure that things are running pretty normally. And if not, it gives the administrator a bit of a prompt to say, look, something strange is going on over there. You might want to have a quick look at it. And then ideally, if they look at that, then it's a case of, actually, yes, there's a bit of a virus on there. We need to get rid of that quickly. And then the last thing that you get inside this is Azure AD Premium. So this does quite a few interesting things. So you've got single sign-on for third parties. So this is really taking away, so if you've got a marketing department, for example, and they need access to Twitter, Instagram, all the social networking and social marketing that people do these days, they all have different passwords, potentially. So making sure that they only need one password for their Office 365 account, and then they can sign on to those other third-party applications seamlessly through Office 365. They don't need to know all the different passwords. So if they ever leave, then you've got, as a company, right, okay, we're pretty safe. But they haven't got any passwords. They only had the one password that they had to log into their PC, and we've disabled that. So that's that. So again, pretty important from that side of things. Multi-factor authentication, really big one. So you've probably got this on a number of different applications you already use day to day. So banking, for example, is definitely one of them. So if I sign in on my bank onto a different device, it's probably going to send me a text to say, by the way, can you just confirm that this is you? So this is exactly the same thing, but for Office 365. And this goes across all the applications as well. So, Dynamics, if you've got that, factor authentication enabled for that as well. So really important to have on, and making sure that, if people get hold of your password, even if they've got that, they still need to get hold of your phone or to be able to get into your account. Self-service password resets are pretty ideal for IT managers or anyone dealing with the IT side of things. People can reset their own passwords if they forget. Kind of saves start call queues and things like that. Azure domain join. So obviously making sure that, pretty interesting one, making sure that people are joined onto the domain, and it means that you don't necessarily have to have a local domain controller anymore. You can be logging on from anywhere around the world. It will authenticate, so i.e. when you put your password into your machine, authenticate in the cloud and say, right, yep, this is, he's allowed onto the domain now, and you can still access all the stuff that you can access back in work. So pretty good, and you've got to be on Windows 10 to do that. And then again, advanced reporting on usage and intelligent user access blocking. So this is basically pretty clever, i.e. what that means is that I'm in London at the minute. If I suddenly, in 5 minutes' time, log in from New York, Office 365 and Azure AD Premium is going to realise that is not physically possible. For me to get from London to New York in 5 minutes is not possible. So it's probably going to block me and say, right, or identify it to an administrator, depending on how you set it up, and say, look, something dodgy is going on here. Phil, for some reason, was here, and now he's over there in 5 minutes. That's not possible. Someone's probably trying to get into his account. So again, it's making sure that trying to take away the human side of things and use the technology to make sure we've got better security in place around all of our information. That's pretty much it from me. Obviously, there's a few quotes there of people that we've done a bit of work for around GDPR.
I suppose that's it from both of us. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon, and have a fantastic Easter.